Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Myth Salon. The Winter Solstice is one of the most unique days. We've made it a holiday, and in a lot of cultures, they make it a holiday. But it stems from the most ancient times of people really seeking to orient themselves to the day, to the night, and how to make something out of the world that largely was very threatening. Throughout the world, almost every culture celebrates this, where it's the longest night and it's the shortest day. And the earth is tilting away from the sun in the northern hemisphere. I am really honored by the amount of participation and love that has been shown for this Winter Solstice Myth Salon. So I'd like to open it up with a moment of silence. Then I'd like to read a short poem. It's called Winter. A friend of mine has died. Her green transformed to dust. The air swallowing all but the memory of her vitality and purpose. The wind swirls about, breaking the silence, singing across the landscape. My ear reaches for any definition that will say it is fiction that her light has passed into darkness. From darkness, all things are born. And in darkness, she will endure. Bridges and memories arise from the thinnest of moments. A gesture, the turn of a phrase, imagination lingering long after the warmth cools. Threads becoming fabric, becoming shelter. In moist solitude, we gather in isolation, searching for the tiniest speck of light. It is time to nurture the soil, to stir and even the moisture. Embrace the darkness, resolve and center. It is time to reach into the soul for seeds, one by one, carving a place for home. It is time to remember, to tend the dream, so when light penetrates, the seeds can begin their journey. Winter holds the spring contained, and tears, real or memoried, wash across years of miss and loss. Each moment, some part of me dies. Another is born. Another flowers while still others wane. Light stirs and connects embers chilled in the ashes, sparks in the coals of this sacred space. The healing process begins. Thus, the cycle continues, rose petal to ash, and dream, fired by pain, loss, and by love. I am so honored by all of the friends, two of my classmates here, one of my professors. I feel very validated. Dr. Raïna Manuel Paris was raised in France and England until her early 20s. She earned her doctorate in mythological studies from Pacifica. She also holds a master's degree in film from Columbia. Raïna uses the tarot and other oracle tools, including a process she calls the cradle and the crown, to work with her clients. She taught magic and ritual at the Art Institute in Santa Monica for more than 20 years. Her online courses and lectures are available at prs.org, and her website is www.rainamparis.com. Dr. Jennifer Taylor also earned her PhD from Pacifica in the Myth program and has been teaching humanities as well as mythology since 1996 at Valencia College in Orlando, Florida, for more than 25 years. Jennifer, Raïna, and I were classmates in the same cohort in our doctoral program at Pacifica. Vanessa Valdez is a journalist and a life coach with an MA in spiritual psychology, and she's the founder and host of the Transforming Consciousness talk radio show at KPFK. She is currently completing her doctorate in depth psychology with a specialization in integrative healing practices at Pacifica. Melinda Lee Holm is the author of Your Tarot Guide, Tarot of Tales, Your Magical Year, and Elemental Power Tarot. She's also the co-author of Divine Your Dinner, which I have and I bought when I first found it. It's a beautiful book. It's available on Amazon.com. She is currently earning her Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing at the University of California, Riverside. She lives in Los Angeles with her husband, Chris Holmes, an elderly cat, and a tiny, perfect dog. I want one of those. I want that tiny, perfect dog. Jonas, Dr. Robert A. Jonas, received his doctorate in education from Harvard, and he moved on to explore healing resonances between Christian contemplative prayer, psychotherapy, and Buddhist meditation. He founded the Empty Bell Sanctuary in Western Massachusetts in 1994. He plays the shakuhachi flute and has performed in many secular and spiritual settings, including a number of Buddhist Christian retreats with the Dalai Lama. Dr. Dennis Patrick Slattery is a distinguished emeritus professor in the Myth program at Pacifica. He's the author, editor, and co-editor of 30 volumes, including 7 volumes of poetry and a novel. His paintings, pottery, blogs, and book titles, as well as upcoming events, can be found at DennisPatrickSlattery.com. Well, tonight you may notice that I'm flying solo. My good friend and moderator of the Myth Salon, Dr. Willie Lin, he's in Japan. So I'm Dana White. I'm host and producer of the Myth Salon. Our featured presenter for the Winter Solstice Myth Salon tonight is Amanda Yates Garcia, a writer, scholar of the occult, and a public witch. She was an early presenter in the pre-COVID days when we were holding the Myth Salons in my Santa Monica home. She's a sought-after speaker on pagan traditions, ritual, and mystery cults. Amanda has been featured in the New York Times, the LA Times, San Francisco Chronicle, the London Times, CNN, as well as an appearance with Tucker Carlson on Fox that has literally gone viral.
Amanda Yates Garcia is the Oracle of Los Angeles. She says she's a witch, tarot card reader, spellcaster, energy healer, intuitive medium, shamanic practitioner, and magical life coach. Last night, she helped cast a so-called binding spell on our president to prevent him from causing harm to others. We've asked many witches to come on this program, but only Amanda Yates Garcia was brave enough to accept our invitation. She joins us tonight from Los Angeles. Amanda, thank you for coming on tonight. I just had a panic communication, the commercial break, with one of my producers, Alex, who said, be nice to her. I don't want to spell on me. So I hope that you'll pull back on your powers and spare our staff. What does this mean exactly, that you cast a binding spell on the president?
Binding spells are like any other spell, so they're a symbolic action used to harness the powers of the imagination and achieve a tangible result eventually. Yeah.
And what was the result that you desired?
Well, I desire that Trump stop harming people that I care about and instituting policies that also harm me or other people that I care about. So my ultimate aim is that we protect the people that we love from having harm done to them. But in the meantime, I think what's really important is that we create a sense of solidarity and empowerment within the people who are participating in the spell to galvanize them towards action so that they can feel empowered to make the changes that they want to see in the world.
Most people just go ahead and vote or like buy a T-shirt. Is this legal? Can you run around casting spells on? Are you allowed to cast spells on people? Is there any kind of federal regulation of this?
Well, okay, so symbolic action is something that everybody participates in all the time, right? So you might think, oh, that doesn't really have any meaning. But if that were true, then, for instance, why would people care whether or not people saluted the flag or sang the national anthem? That's also symbolic action, and that kind of symbolic action does have power, and that's why people care about it. So while I don't think that any witch is thinking, oh, this is the only action that is necessary to prevent Trump from enacting his mean policies, I think that they're hoping that by doing these symbolic actions that will galvanize people to resist with our hearts, with our full hearts.
So since you're the only witch, I've interviewed a lot of people, but I've never interviewed a witch. Does it ever worry you? I mean, by the way, I'm not dismissing what you're saying. I don't think that the only things that exist are the things that we can see. There clearly is a supernatural. I don't understand it, but I wonder if you're ever worried about the consequences of, bluntly, fooling around with things that nobody really understands.
You know, a lot of people ask me that, whether or not I worry about the supernatural consequences of what I'm doing. I mean, I trust that what I'm doing is for the greatest good of all concerned, because that's what I hold in my heart.
But you think good intentions will protect you? I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of spooky, but you seem nice, and I'm glad that you came on.
If you need a lesson, Carlson.
No, I don't. Scares me. I appreciate it, though. Thanks for coming on.
Her Instagram website has 52,000 followers. She lectures, leads rituals, teaches classes and workshops on magic and witchcraft at UCLA, University of California, Irvine, the Hammer Museum, LACMA, the Getty, which is where I met her, and many other venues. She hosts monthly moon rituals online through the popular Between the Worlds podcast, which looks at Western mystery traditions through a mythopoetic lens. To find out more about her work, visit substack.com, Mystery Cult with Amanda Yates Garcia, which has over 14,000 subscribers. We are deeply honored to have Amanda back with us and look forward to what is in store for us tonight in the Winter Solstice Myth Salon. Thank you, everyone. Amanda?
Thank you so much, Dana. It's such a pleasure to be here with you, all of you tonight. I want to thank everyone who's here for coming. We're just welcoming you in whatever state you're in, whatever mood of whatever complexity you're bringing to this work. I just want to acknowledge that this is a really difficult time. There is a lot of strife and chaos in the world, in Palestine, in Sudan, in the Congo, the Uyghur people, in Israel. And it's important that as we begin, we acknowledge that there are these continued fights throughout the world also for ecological well-being and vitality. And also acknowledging that I come to you from Tongva lands. I grew up on Chumash lands. These lands are unceded lands that have been taken from the people who were the traditional stewards of this land and continue to be the stewards of this land and will be again. I would love to hear what mood everybody is coming to this work in and the traditional lands that you are living on. If you like to put it in the chat and to just let us know that you're here. It's a good way for us to start to engage with one another and bring the circle together. Just a reminder that even though we're in this state of great tumult in the world, which is not likely to settle down anytime soon, our rituals, our ways, our little pockets of peace that we create so that we can be in right relationship with the spiritual world, with the spirits of nature, with each other. It gives us a chance to touch back in with our hearts and be part of this larger mystery that surrounds us, and to do it with intention. So yeah, if you put where you're coming from in the chat, and even our guests can put in what lands they're on and what mood they're in as they join us today. Oh, there we see. Oh, hi, Chumash lands. Wonderful. Thank you, Raïna. So before we get started, we're just going to get into our bodies a little bit and remember that we have bodies. All magic occurs in the material world. It's a manifestation of bringing what's in the imaginal realms into the material world. And so we're going to start just by remembering that we have bodies. So you can stand or you can sit, whatever feels better to you. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw up the awen. So awen is the substance of inspiration. It's a Welsh word, and it's like the spirit of the other world, the substance of the other world. That is the force of inspiration, is the force of dreams, is the force of the life force as it percolates through the universe. So we're just going to feel our feet on the ground if that's possible for you right now. Otherwise, if that's not available to you, you can just stay seated however you are. And pull up with your breath. Take one deep breath, pulling up the heat and awen from the earth, rinsing it over your face and bringing it down to the earth. We'll do that 3 times. So just pulling the energy of the earth up through your body and showering yourself with it. And on your exhale, letting it drop down like rain. One more time. And then we'll repeat that process, only this time drawing down the inspiration from heaven, down to our core, to our feet, and letting it circle back up as we breathe in through our energy field, drawing down that inspiration from the stars, from the planet, from the sun, rinsing it through our body in a shower of light, and then moving it through our entire energy field. And one more time. Breathing in and breathing out. And just taking a moment to sit and notice what happens, how things already begin to shift as you move into your material form. Placing your hands on your heart and offering yourself a little gratitude for bringing yourself here to this sacred time. This time to reconnect with spirit, with purpose, with what is sacred in your life. Thank you for bringing yourself to do this tonight. And just checking in with yourself and noticing how are you? as if you're checking in with a very dear friend without feeling like you need to change anything or give any advice, but just really listening to what has been going on for you in this swirl of energy as you arrive in this space now. Listening with compassion and with love. And decide on the energies that you want to call in tonight. Who do you want to join us? I'm calling in the spirits of nature. I'm calling in the spirits of air, of wind, of breath. Calling in the spirits of the ocean, of rain, of all the sacred waters of the earth. Calling in the spirit of stones, of mountains, of trees. Calling in the spirit of heat and sunlight and the heat at the core of the earth. Calling in all my teachers and guides, all my friends who stand by me and teach me so much. The spirit of my cat, my pagan familiar, whose name is Pagan. She's now on the other side. May she join me here. And consider too what you want to bring. What do you want to bring to our altar that we're creating together tonight? So, in essence, what are you offering? You can offer anything that you want. I want to offer unconditional love and humility for all that I'm still learning and don't know. And I bring that and offer that to our altar. I'd love to go around with our guests here today and hear who they're calling in and what they're bringing to the altar. So let's start with Jennifer and then going to Raïna.
I'm calling in the goddess in all her many, many forms, and her partner as well, usually the lord of the forest. And I'm offering up a full heart and abundant love.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I just want to say before we go into Raïna that people at home, you can also do this. If there's anybody you want to call into our circle, please type it into the chat and just offer what you're bringing here tonight to our work tonight. And it can be anything. It can also be objects. You could offer the amazing eggnog that you've been cooking up, or your beautiful wreath of holly that you've got on your door, or anything that you feel like would be fun to add to our space tonight. I hope that you do let that be known. So let's go to Raïna and then Jonas.
Thank you. I'm calling in my ancestors, all the witches in my matrilineal line who've passed on, and spirit guides. And I'm offering maybe just a little bit deeper connection and willingness to be okay with the unknown.
Beautiful. I welcome that to our circle. Thank you so much, Raïna. Jonas and then Martin.
Thank you. I'm in Western Massachusetts in the ancient location of the Nipmuc tribe, and who I've been working with a little bit. And I call in my ancestors, my grandparents especially, who took me and my siblings in from a out of control alcoholic home with domestic violence. My grandparents, the Redens family. So I'm very thankful for them. Glad they're here.
Thank you so much, Jonas. So I've been informed that Martin does not exist. So we're going to Vanessa and then Dennis.
Well, first of all, it's good to see you, Amanda. And I'm calling in all of my ancestors, the beauty and the magic and the mysticism of my culture that is very much in resonance to this day. I'm also calling in the archetype of Jesus, the archetype of Mary Magdalene, and my offering is the power of the womb, which I feel and I sense very much in resonance to what we're going to be perhaps delving into. This energy of death, of something needing to die for the rebirth of. And so that's where I'm sensing that this womb power is coming through very, very powerfully for me right now. And that's my offering.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. That's a beautiful offering. You're very welcome here. So let's go to Dennis and then Melinda.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity, Amanda. This is wonderful. I live in an area in Central Texas where within an hour's walk of where I'm sitting are dinosaur tracks imprinted in granite that have appeared in the last year because of the drought here in Texas. And before that, they weren't visible. And they're millions of years old. And they're so close that I think the spirit of that prehistoric world is very much here. I'm calling in all of those people who I know and loved who have died in 2023. And I'm also calling in all those people who I have forgiven in 2023. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonas. They are all welcome here as well, all of the spirits that you called in. Melinda and then Dana.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I am calling in the spirits of the 5 classical elements of the pentagram and my dearly departed familiars, my Fool and my Hierophant, Chevy and Gouda, little dog and kitty cat, and Archangel Gabriel. And I would like to offer acceptance without the need for understanding. Just a pure acceptance.
That is a very welcome gift for this circle. Thank you so much. Melinda, Dana, what are you calling in and what are you offering?
Well, what I would like to call in are all the animals, because the animals that I have had in my life, when I heard you talk about your perfect little dog, I am struggling with the dog that I have, and I don't want to struggle with him. I love him actually, but he's a problem, and I love the animals, and I love the animals up here in Santa Cruz. We have seals, we have dolphin. I wake up every morning and I hear barking sea lions. I love all the animals. I have a frog in my backyard that I can't locate, but boy, he sings to me. And I just want us to maintain our connection with the natural world and not feel that somehow or another we're above it or apart from it, and that this natural world is not out there but in us. And I want to grow closer to my little fellow. His name is Otis, which is short for Odysseus, and he knows how to be a good boy. So thank you. And my gift is my sense of boundless compassion and, relentless courage to do these things that we do here. Thank you.
Calling in some peace and chill for little Otis. And thank you so much for your gifts. I'm just noticing too, thank you all of you for calling in all of this great wave of power. And I see this great wave of power coming in through the chat as well. May all those who have gathered with us tonight be healed and receive joy from this work. And maybe we all weave together in a wreath of connectedness and solidarity to bring healing to this beautiful planet. And I just also want to really include our silent guests, our audience here, who's also bringing so much. Every single one of you is bringing something so welcome and so needed, that every ingredient, that we're all an ingredient in this beautiful soup that we're making together, and every ingredient is necessary and nourishing. So thank you so much. And also the spirits you're calling in of your departed ones, just putting their names in the chat and honoring them and calling them into this circle is really important. Calling our beloved dead into the sacred heart of our practice here in our lives is how we keep them alive, and how hopefully we will also be kept alive as we pass on, that our names will be called into the circle, and that we will be able to continue with our kin and family as we do this sacred work throughout time. So I want to offer also some incense to the spirits and to all of your spirits and into your heart, in gratitude for all the spirits who have gathered here with us today and who are guiding us through time, through the darkest night of the year, and calling in the light, and just acknowledging that we see them, that we know them, that we welcome them, that we honor them, sharing it with all of you. You can sweep in all those blessings.
Jonas, do you want to play? Or talk to us a little bit about contemplation, and then take us into something restorative, something that heals the differences and the distances.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So some years ago when I was in seminary, I met in a seminar on the close relationship between Thomas Merton and the Dalai Lama. A student stood up and played this shakuhachi, and I immediately knew it was my instrument. I was 42 years old, and I've been playing it ever since for the last 30 years. And I played in many places in the world, and as Dana mentioned, with the Dalai Lama in some of his retreats. So one blows across the top of this bamboo, length of bamboo. So it's just breath and bamboo. That's all there is. And then moving one's fingers over the holes. So I will play a little piece on the shakuhachi. I should say that I'm a contemplative Christian, and I've been in dialogue with Buddhists for, I guess, 40 years, Buddhists of all sorts, Southeast Asia, Korea, Japan, always seeking the common ground and the blessings that come from that dialogue. So the shakuhachi, I mentioned this. This came from China to Japan in the 6th century. It was played by Buddhist monks for many centuries. Only Buddhist monks could play it. I've seen pieces of paper on telephone poles in the late 19th century that tell you how many years you'd have to be in prison if you played the shakuhachi if you weren't a Buddhist monk. So here I am. I'm free. I'm not being arrested. But this is the shakuhachi. Just the breath, and paying attention to the pause at the top of the breath and the pause at the bottom when we let go of the breath. Those places to me are like the darkness of solstice, and the breath between, the beauty between the two breaths, at the beginning and the end of the breath. and the breath disappears. So thank you.
Thank you so much. What a gift to be able to experience the breath in that way, coming into being in that way. Thank you so much. Jonas, what an honor.
Okay. Well, thank you for this beautiful introduction into sacred space and inviting all of us in this way. It's just beautiful. Really appreciate it. So I'm really aware that the Demeter Persephone myth is not like an obvious choice for the winter solstice. There are, many myths and stories about the winter solstice and the rebirth of light. A lot of them, like Horus, is supposed to be born on the winter solstice, and that's the Egyptian god. And you have many other stories about the birth, right? The birth of Christ, right? That's connected to the winter solstice as well. And I'm also aware that at least I have the sense that Norse myth and Celtic myth have a particular affinity with the winter solstice because they understand the longest night, right? Because they are in the northern hemisphere. They really get a sense of that longest night, right? That darkest night before the light is reborn. And also that feeling that in a lot of the stories, like Ra going into the underworld and struggling with Apep, the serpent of chaos, every night, right, in the underworld, so he can be reborn the next day. There is this feeling of struggle and violence, and that it takes hard work for the light to reappear, and you have to work for that, and you have to be committed to that. And so when I was thinking about this and the winter solstice, I thought about those elements and what they all have in common, and why I was so drawn to the Demeter Persephone myth. I do believe that that you can find your particular myth, that there might be a myth or a story or fairy tale that truly resonates like in your bones, and that can be a very powerful thing. It can be very transformative, disruptive, and healing as well. And it can resonate for decades inside of you. And sometimes it's a new myth that comes in, or a fairy tale. And the Demeter Persephone myth is not my myth. It hasn't been my myth. I had another fairy tale that was really powerful for me. But the beginning of the year, my mother died. And for whatever reason, with that death, this is emotional for me. That myth became so powerful. And I was asked about it in another situation by another student of mine. And it kind of woke me up to something new. And I related to it because of the process of going into the underworld. The daughter goes into the underworld. I was looking for a guide through the underworld of the myth for me, and The Long Journey Home, that's edited by Christine Downing, has been my guide through this journey. And I'm just going to touch upon some of the essays and how they speak to me. And hopefully that'll open up more things afterwards. So all of these myths that have to do with the winter solstice are also about the mystery of death and rebirth. And I think the mother-daughter myth really speaks to that. In The Long Journey Home, there are like commentaries from all kinds of different people, from theologians to feminist theorists and poets and storytellers, which I really liked. The classical sources of the myth is The main one would be Homer's hymn to Demeter. And it's clear that it's about, well, for those of you who don't know the myth, I'll just tell very briefly, and perhaps we can be taken into the myth more, the story itself more deeply later. But Demeter is the goddess of grain. She's the goddess of earth, and her daughter are really, really close. And then one spring, the daughter's playing with her friends, and she looks at this gorgeous flower of the narcissus, and then the earth opens up and she's taken by Hades into the underworld, who turns out to have been colluding with Zeus, who is the daughter's father, to be taken into the underworld and become his bride. And it's basically Demeter's story is the focus, and the intensity of the grief she goes through, and also her rage, and how everything stops growing and everything is dying. And so Zeus realizes it's untenable, it can't keep going, and the daughter has to return to her mother, but because she's eaten of the food of the underworld with the pomegranate seeds, she can't stay with her mother for the whole time, and thus the time will be shared between her mother and Hades. And of course, the idea of the seasons, spring and summer, the renewal and the rebirth of the seasons is connected to Persephone's return. And then, of course, the fall and the winter is connected to her being in underworld. So that's that in a nutshell. There's many details, where one of the servants takes Demeter out of her depression by making her laugh and showing off her genitalia to her. There's many details in the myth, and maybe we can go into those later, but that's the basic story. And in most of the interpretations, whether it's Homer's hymn to Demeter or in Ovid's Metamorphoses, there's an emphasis on it's the abduction of the daughter, but from the point of view of Demeter, right? Everything is very centered around the mother. And also for Ovid, it's more the mother's rage, and then the innocence of the Kore, right? She's called, the daughter is the Kore, the maiden. So I want to also mention, because we are in ritual space and sacred space, what's fairly clear is that the mysteries, the Eleusinian mysteries, predate the hymn to Demeter. They were there before, and that there was also a conflation of the Demeter Kore cult with the Persephone cult, and Persephone was seen as also pre-Indo-European, pre-Greek. And the mysteries themselves seem to center on its power to alleviate the fear of death. And Chris Downing mentions George Milanos, who basically says that whatever the substance itself and the meaning of the mysteries, the cult of Eleusis satisfied what he calls the most sincere yearnings and the deepest longing of the human heart, which is, I think, quite extraordinary. In two of the essays, one by Adrian Rich and the other by Carol Christ, they really emphasize the enduring bond of mother and daughter. And here you have two paintings, one of the grief of Demeter, and then in the other, the daughter being returned by Hermes to the mother. Rich says in her essay that the mother's wrath, the mother's rage, crystallizes the miracle of her daughter's return. So it's a powerful statement. It's this idea that the intensity of the feeling is necessary for that rebirth to take place. For Carol Christ, she also emphasizes the idea of the mother fighting for her daughter and the relationship with the daughter. And she also says, for her, that the myth is a rejection of the patriarchal pattern where the primary loyalties of mother and daughter must be to men, right? In the myth, for her, they're truly about the loyalty to each other. Because in the beginning, when the daughter is in the underworld, she rejects everything. She's also in grief and she doesn't want to have anything to do with anything. I was really moved by Carol Christ's essay because she talked about how healing the story was for her, as her own mother was dying, and she'd had a very difficult relationship with her own mother, as I did. And this archetype of the mother willing to go to any length for her daughter was really healing and powerful for her. What helped her the most was this, and coming to this understanding of why the Greeks imagined the mystery of death as a mother-daughter mystery. In other words, Demeter is initiated into an understanding of death through the loss of her daughter. And Carol Christ was initiated into the understanding of the mystery of death through the loss of her mother. So I found that incredibly resonant for me personally. So I do want to mention that a lot of the commentators talk about the abduction, right, which is central to the myth, not as a violation, but as initiation, which is kind of tricky because initiation by rape is still rape. And it's a very strong theme in male-centered culture to control the woman into her social role. But whether you see it as violation or initiation or really as both, the point is that it is so violent and so intense, it's so profound, that meeting with the underworld, that meeting with death, that it changes her completely, right? The daughter is completely changed. She goes from being the Kore, this maiden, innocent and quite passive, right, to becoming Persephone, right, the queen of the underworld. So it's a powerful transformation. Even when Hermes returns her to her mother, she's no longer the same. A lot of the women writers in the book talk about this initiation into maturity, right? Leaving the maiden state and becoming a mature, into the mature feminine. And of course, from a Jungian perspective, you can also look at the myth as illuminating the inner experience of women, as like Hades being the conduit in terms of helping Persephone get to know herself as who she's becoming from the Puella Eterna into a more complete and full sense of self, and which includes, if you look at the Orphic cults, the mother of furies, right? She's called the mother of furies in the Orphic cult. So that's a whole other powerful sense of things. So depending on how you view the myth, what the emphasis is for you, you can be really with the mother figure, right? And what she goes through in terms of her own transformation. You can be with Demeter, or you can be with Persephone. You can be with Zeus as the initiator of change, and with Hades. You can even be with Aphrodite, because in one of the stories, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, is the one who actually inflames Hades' heart so that he takes Persephone into the underworld, so that love can also rule the underworld. So I think that's the essence of the power of myth, in that it speaks differently to at different times and can be interpreted in different ways. And each one of us can have our own personal connection to the story, to the myth. So it's almost as if in the myth, both Demeter and Persephone are pregnant with their own future selves. And in my own fantasy, when the daughter returns as queen of the underworld, she brings with her the wisdom of death. It is only in eating the seeds, right, which represent for me, which are the wisdom of death, that you can infuse life with all of its intensity, its power, its vitality, by allowing the seeds of death to infuse life. I added, there's one slide that's the Phantom of the Opera, because it's such a powerful, here he looks not so much as Hades as Charon, you know, the ferryman taking her into the underworld, but it's kind of an interesting image, I think very haunting image of being taken into the underworld. So I want to end with one of the essays in the book is by Walter Otto, and it's about the meaning of the Eleusinian mysteries. And it's a later essay that he presented at Eranos. And he mentions Aristotle's testimony that the initiates were not meant to learn anything, but to suffer an experience and be moved. Right? And the power is in this idea that Persephone is called and that she answers. And let me just read this little paragraph here, which I think is really beautiful. The queen of the underworld is present, and Demeter, of course, as well. Demeter with her grief, her lament, her search and rediscovery. The gods are at hand as they were at the beginning of time, not only as majestic figures demanding reverence, but as what they are, supreme realities of the here and now, primal phenomena of the movement of being, creating and suffering powers of the living moment, which also encompasses death. The Eleusinian Mystes lived the miracle of intimacy with the goddesses. He experienced their presence. He was received into the sphere of their acts and sufferings, into the immediate reality of their sublime beings. His famous vision was not mere looking on, it was sublimation to a higher existence, a transformation of his being. And is that not a rebirth? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raïna. That was so beautiful and moving and really just captures the essence of Winter Solstice so beautifully to inspire us to find that awakening within and to make peace with the realities of life and death and rebirth. Thank you for that time and that commitment and that wisdom. So, as we know, winter solstice is the longest night of the year in the northern hemisphere, and it's both the beginning of the new year and the end of the old year, and it represents the rebirth of the light. And I particularly love the way that in paganism, death is life, life is death, that light and darkness are one. And this holiday really makes me meditate on the reality of the challenges, and especially given all that is going on in the world that I feel like is shaking people really to their core. We're really being shaken, woken up. What I think is so beautiful about the solstice in that for us is that the darkness doesn't go away, right? Like there's a cycle. They both exist simultaneously. light, darkness, life, death. And when we are aware of the fact that our time is cyclical rather than linear, right? We're not trying to find an end to everything. We're not saying, okay, it's going to be light now forever, but honoring that, in fact, whether we like it or not, it will be winter. And it will be spring. The cycle keeps moving. The wheel keeps turning. And there's a real desire, I think, in particular in the American psyche, to want to fix it, to finalize it, to have an end to everything, to say, okay, we've done, and now we're moving on to the next thing. We fix the crisis, we fix the violence. Of course, in the United States, we'd never fix the violence, but we think, okay, we're just gonna do this solution, and then we're gonna move on to the next thing. And what I think is particularly interesting about honoring holidays that relate to the sun, the moon, the earth through space is that it changes our relationship to temporality. It changes our relationship to time, both within our own lives and within the larger community. That we are brought in, that we, like Persephone, are called in to the time of the universe, the grand time scales, the cyclical nature of things happening. And in this, the darkest night, the longest night, we are invited to consider, given that dark does come, that night does come, that winter will come, that we're not going to get rid of all of it. We're not going to get rid of it even within our own psyches. Who do we want to be? Who do we want to be in the midst of all this? How do we want to show up for this? Here is this time of contemplation. What are the stories that we want to tell? Who do we want to invoke into this space? What ancestors do we want to call upon? And when I say who do we want to be, I'm not just thinking of who do we want to be as individuals, but how do we collectively, who love each other and who honor the sacred and who honor nature and who want peace and who want interconnectedness and love, who do we show up as collectively? And how do we practically make that happen? Like, not just as an idea, like it's fun to light a candle on solstice, but by doing these rituals, we say what is important to us. We speak into the circle, the miracles of life and death and grief and rebirth, connecting us to this ancient legacy that we are trying as a race, as a human race, as a species, to understand. And so Raïna speaks into the space, this message that goes back thousands of years. And who knows into what depths of time this story goes back. And we touch upon that when we call on that in our rituals. This is also the first day of Capricorn. The first day of Capricorn always falls on the winter solstice. So Capricorn is the cardinal earth sign. Cardinal sign is a beginner. It launches us into something. Capricorn is also a monument builder, right? It builds monuments to that which it loves. It wants things to last the test of time. And it's also, ironically, known as the gate of death in astrology. The first day of Capricorn is the gate of death because this is when the sun starts to rise on the horizon. The sun being the soul, the spirit, leaves, departs, starts going up. And then on summer solstice, the brightest day, the most joyful day, full in the light, is when it starts to come back into corporeality again. It kind of enters the birth canal again. So on the darkest night is the time when the soul departs, but it's also when the days start to get longer again. And it's also when we start to commit to what we want to create in time, what we want to do with our following year, what we want to commit ourselves to in general. So I invite us all to consider here on the darkest night, what is the beauty of the dark? What do we get from the dark? What beautiful things happen in the dark? I'd love to go around and we can just say one or two. I'm going to say dreams. Dreams come to us in the dark and in the night, and roots. Roots underground, moving into the soil, connecting us to our histories, connecting us to nourishment, connecting us to other roots. These are two gifts of the dark. Dana and then Jennifer.
You know, I loved the phrase, Raïna, that we are pregnant with our future selves. And what I gleaned from kind of reading up on where the ancient cultures were related to the solstice was for them, the night was the beginning of the day. That the day didn't start at sunrise, it starts at sunset. And I found that to be very interesting. I mean, as my friend Eric wrote in the chat, that light doesn't come from light, it emerges out of darkness. And I really think we are driven in our culture because of our capitalist consumer orientation to things in the light, things that we can hold, things that we can react to, not things that we feel. And it's those interior states of being that are a little murky. They're filled with uncertainty. That when you talk about things going bumping in the night, really what we're talking about is the night reaching out to us and making contact with us. And those, to me, are really powerful metaphors for how we can actualize who we really are when we can't see who we are.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Jennifer and then Dennis.
So I connect with the night really, and as the winter solstice with a time for really deep rest and reconnection, a turning inward, and a time for sort of soul healing, so we can reflect inward rather than be focused outward. So it just feels like a really nourishing time, almost like a animal going into its den and just renewing itself.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And so I'm going, yeah, so Dennis and then Raïna. However, I also want to invite folks in the chat to also put in what beautiful things come to us from the dark and from the night.
Yeah.
If you'd like to add anything. So yes, Dennis.
Well, I'm going to state the obvious, or maybe it's obvious, I'm not sure. I wouldn't know the light without the darkness. In other words, the light needs darkness to reveal itself. And as one who writes and studies poetry, I think poetry gives us dark knowledge. It's a knowledge of the dark, but it's also a darkening of the world that in some paradoxical way that poetry is always putting into our faces, the nature of paradox, is that it illuminates something in the darkness. So the nature of light and darkness for me is paradoxical. And of course, in painting, it's the chiaroscuro that modulates light and darkness to shape a new image. So it's really a rich topic that you've brought up and that Raïna was presenting to us so beautifully. And Raïna, if I can just say to you, I love the fact that you identified implicitly what makes a myth vital and alive, because it can mutate and it can migrate and it can be personalized. What I fear sometimes about myth studies, which is what I loved about teaching at Pacifica, that they didn't fall into the trap, where a myth can ossify or calcify and become an ideology. But when it stays fluid in the way that you beautifully presented it, it stays a living organism. Yeah, so thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Raïna.
I love the night. I love to go outside at night and look up at the stars. It gives me the sense of belonging to something vast and universal. It gets me out of the sort of confinement of time and place and who I am. It lifts my spirit, and my soul reaches to that distance as something that allows me to expand and feel my connection, my otherness in a certain way. So I love the night sky. It inspires me, and I find it healing in allowing myself to surrender to it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Melinda and then Vanessa.
I think of darkness as this thing that gives us the gift of anonymity, right? We're in perfect darkness. If you can't see your form, you can't see anyone else's physical form, it gives us sort of a lens into who we are deeper than that, into the emotional self, the spiritual self, the psychic self. And it's kind of that sense of who would you be if you didn't have the burden of maintaining who you are. And I think at the solstice, winter solstice especially, it is this time when we're all the way down into the darkness, and then the light's going to grow bit by bit. Like, what do you want to bring back out into the light? Right? You don't have to take everything with you, and you don't have to do it all at once. It's just day by day.
So beautiful. Thank you so much. So many beautiful comments coming in the chat as well. And I hope everybody's getting a chance to read those because they're really rich. And I love what's coming out, that we can see further into the universe only when it's dark. When it's bright, when it's light, we're just seeing what's around us. But when only in the night, in the dark, can we see into the collective. So Vanessa.
I love this, what's brewing, what I call brewing in the cauldron, these threads. I mentioned the womb earlier, and then it's like this beautiful thread. I heard someone mention the birth canal, and then someone else, I believe it was Raïna, that mentioned pregnant with our future selves. And then from there, Amanda, you mentioned the soil, and Dana shared with all of us this beautiful poem. What I remember is like the nurturing of that soil. So like when I bring all that beautiful like thread into that cauldron, it seems to be kind of like something is coming into fruition. It takes me back to the womb, and it takes me back into like these moments, this time right now of the winter solstice, of inviting us back into the womb, inviting us back into receiving, tending, this nurturance. And oftentimes, in my experience, when you allow yourself to be in that, how beautiful is it in terms of nature? Everything care, nothing is in no rush. We need all this to be able to blossom in the spring. So everything is just so perfectly orchestrated. And there's so much there that is coming through, but I really want to focus on this beautiful thread and resonance to the womb and inviting us back into the womb during this time. So
Thank you so much. To invoke the seed, like brewing there in the dark and drawing from all the compost that we've created through all the difficult things, and the richness that we all bring together when we each add our own ingredient. Jonas, I was wondering if you might consider telling us what beauty the dark has for you, and then if you can play your song.
Thank you. The darkness is antithetical to all my graduate education. I graduated from Dartmouth and then a doctorate from Harvard, and I had a huge struggle at these places. Dartmouth because it was all men, and I felt that there was something missing there for me. And then we men were in our heads, and I couldn't breathe, and and at Harvard, it wasn't much better. I was trained in psychoanalytic psychology, and but I was lucky to change my dissertation directors. Carol Gilligan was on my committee, and my dissertation was I interviewed 30 couples, men and women heterosexual couples, and I was especially interested in the men who became involved in birth control and child rearing. So that was my focus. I had been part of, when I was a hippie, I had been part of, in Berkeley, California, a part of a group of people who were delivering babies. And we had doctor backup and so on. We never lost a baby, but I became intimately acquainted with the power of women. The power of women that was not the male power that I grew up with in Wisconsin when I played football for 6 years. And it was not that kind of power, not Green Bay Packer power. It was a power, a delicacy and a beauty of the power of women to bring new life. Many, many births that I was at, I cried. And I had never had that kind of experience, as childhood or growing up. So that was part, that change, that transformation was in my dissertation. And after that, I became a psychotherapist, especially interested in men-women relationships. And I'm heterosexual. I went through a divorce. I'm married to an Episcopal priest whose full-time job is working on climate change. And the Empty Bell Retreat Center that I've been hosting for 30 years is focused on listening to oneself and listening to others. I don't know anything about mythology. It's one of the reasons I wanted to be here, so I could learn. But I am interested in all the mystical traditions. I'm especially in Christianity and Buddhism.
Thank you so much. Melinda, would you like to give us a reading? I want to just let everybody know where we're going with this. So Melinda's going to give us a reading on 2023-2024, the shift from the 1 year to another. And then we're going to do a little bit of ritual of letting go and calling in. All of us will be doing that together. So why don't we go with Melinda and then Dennis, and then we'll do the ritual, and then Jennifer, you can go into the greater depth of the myth, if that sounds good to everyone. All right, Melinda.
Hey, thank you. So I'm just going to pull 2 cards, one for last year and one for this coming year. And okay, this one's really wants to come out. And what I'm looking at isn't what happened and what's going to happen, right? For one, we know what happened, and I don't know what's going to happen. And I think even if I did, and you didn't like it, you could navigate around it, right? So I think of tarot as a language and a compass instead of a predictive thing. Ooh, okay. So 2023, 3 of Cups, and then 2024, Queen of Swords. I love this 3 of Cups for 2023 because it is inviting us all to look back at the past year through the lens of true friendship and heartfelt connection. Yes, a lot of terrible things happen. People have been through a lot of hardship. I'm one of them. I'm not immune to it. None of us are. But there have also been, for all of us, some really beautiful moments of support and friendship and love, that deep, deep platonic, familial, whether family of origin, chosen family love that we can look back for and gather up with us as kind of a support as we move into 2024. And then as we move forward, we take all of that beautiful love and support and we channel it through our heart. Queens are the water of their suit. So through water's the element of emotion, right? Through the heart. And then swords, air, focusing it. Once your heart is buoyed in all of this beautiful support and love, where does that allow your intellect to focus? Where can you see? What can you see now that you couldn't see before? And how can you aim that into this next year and make decisions about what you put into the world? And because swords are air, what you say, what words you say, what is the message, and how does that message come through? So that's our 2023-2024 guidance.
I was so excited to see that Queen of Swords come in.
It's so pretty too with her big.
Yeah. We could use a little Queen of Swords level discernment coming in and guiding us with truth and clarity. So Dennis, would you like to read your poems?
Yes, and if you'll allow it, and it feels like this comment by Joseph Campbell in a book that was published last month that I'd like you all to know about. It's Joseph Campbell, Myth and Meaning, Conversations on Life and on mythology and life. And they're all interviews all the way through. And Stephen Geringer has done a magnificent job creating a through line so we can track these interviews that went on for decades. And some of them have never been published. And on page 42, he says this: we govern our social order by the seasons. At the time of the winter solstice, we celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas, but this is a moment that has been celebrated all over the world as the end of the agony of going down into darkness and the beginning of the coming up to light again. The coming of life out of death, which you get with the breaking up of the seed, and out of it comes the plant. Out of rot comes life. This notion, out of death comes life, is fundamental to mythologies. And it just feels to me that the pattern that he's speaking of is very much in line with the Demeter-Persephone myth. I just make that as an observation because it just kept resonating in me as I listened to Raïna and others bring in that myth. Here's a very short poem by W.S. Merwin, and it's entitled Dusk in Winter. The sun sets in the cold without friends, without reproaches, after all it has done for us. Now it goes down, a leaving in nothing. When it is gone, I hear the stream running after it. It has brought its flute. It is a long way. Second poem from Wallace Stevens' The Poem at the End of the Mind collection. And this is a poem entitled The Snowman. One must have a mind of winter to regard the frost and the boughs of the pine trees crusted with snow, and have been cold a long time to behold the junipers shagged with ice, the spruces rough in the distant glitter of the January sun, and not to think of any misery in the sound of the wind, in the sound of a few leaves, which is the sound of the land full of the same wind that is blowing in the same bare place for the listener. who listens in the snow, and nothing himself beholds nothing that is not there, and the nothing that is. And we can't have a reading of poetry without at least one Mary Oliver poem, and this one is just a delight. And this she titles Snowy Night.
Oh,
Did that hit a nerve?
well, it was it was one of the choices of the for opening it up today.
Okay, thank you for not using it.
It was so funny. What a synchronicity. Yeah.
It is a beautiful synchronicity.
Yeah.
It's a lovely poem. I think some of you, I'm sure you know it, but even if you do, it's just wonderful to hear poems aloud. Last night, an owl in the blue dark tossed an indeterminate number of carefully shaped sounds into the world, in which, a quarter of a mile away, I happened to be standing. I couldn't tell which one it was, the bard or the great horned ship of the air. It was that distant. But anyway, aren't there moments that are better than knowing something and sweeter? Snow was falling, so much like stars filling the dark trees, that one could easily imagine its reason for being was nothing more than prettiness. I suppose if this were someone else's story, they would have insisted on knowing whatever is knowable, would have hurried over the fields to name it. The owl, I mean. But it's mine, this poem of the night, and I just stood there listening and holding out my hands to the soft glitter falling through the air. I love this world, but not for its answers. And I wish good luck to the owl, whatever its name. And I wish great welcome to the snow, whatever its severe and comfortless and beautiful meaning. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I feel like that picked up on some of the themes that we've been talking about tonight, and some of the other guests have introduced, of not needing a resolution to
Right.
not try and bring
Yeah.
things to a close, but to be able to sit in the uncertainty. So
Well,
thank you so much.
Amanda, one thing that has occurred to me this evening with the particularly fragrant chat is that there have been, and I've never done this before, but when I produce the video that we upload on this thing, I'm going to go into the chat and pull out all of these chats that people have and just put those in there as the description of what these people say. And I have to give it to you to thank you for, invoking these, because so often I guess there's just a patriarchy to the organization. So the only people that are really talking are the people who are on the screen here. And awful, we've all heard it. So everybody goes away, and there's nothing left. There's no residue. There's no jewels out there. And not to say that we don't say some cool things, but the chat has just been really just like electric. Like it's like somebody threw diamonds out there. And they're like the things up on Jennifer's chair. I mean, they're glowing and they're sparkling, and it just gave me that idea, just to kind of list the person's name, put the few words that they say, and invoking all of these various things that people have. I mean, I think it'll make for, fabulous reading, and yet, where does that come from? Comes from the darkness off screen. If we're the light, this is the darkness. This is what's hiding behind, this lit thing of internet. And at the risk of, going any further than this, I thought I would throw in one thing that is a poem by William John Fitzgerald. And what he says is, "Oh God, black can be beautiful. Let us be aware of black blessings, Blessed be the black night that nurtures dreams. Blessed be the black hole out of which creation sprang. Blessed be the black cave of imagination that births creativity. Blessed be the dark wombs that cradle us. Blessed be black loam that produces nourishing food for our bodies. Blessed be black jazz that nourishes our souls. Blessed be black energy that swirls into gracefulness. Blessed be black boiling clouds hurling down lightning and cleansing rain. Blessed be even our own darkness, our raw, undeveloped cave of shadows. Oh God, help us to befriend black and not deny its power. Help us not to cover over the dark with fear, but to open it with our grace and to be open to our lives within the dark. May we discover the blessings that lie deep within our holy dark so that we may freely affirm that black is beautiful indeed.
Victory to the goddess.
Yeah, you know, when I came across that, and it's always a struggle when I like to open the Myth Salon with poetry, with a single sound, the ringing of the singing bowl. And it's a challenge, you know. And I think if we're guided by the uncertainty and not being so tightly scripted, which is what I really enjoy about the dynamic. And we do have a few minutes if we can go around and just open interchange and let people.
Well, I wanted to do this little ritual, if that's possible.
Great, absolutely. I put myself in your hands. I just don't. This is one of those experiences I kind of don't want it to end right now.
Well, we have a few minutes, so I want to do this ritual with everyone. And I really am grateful to you for bringing up all the gems, the sparkling stars out there in the dark universe of the ether, the internet. One of the things that I've learned through doing ecological activism is that like none of us are free until all of us are free, and that the only way that all of us can get free is if we really honor the wisdom of the group. And since I've started doing that, and since I've started paying more attention to that and noticing that, I have never been let down by all the comments and the richness and the wisdom that comes through the voice that's woven through the group that we call to us tonight to do this work. So thank you all so much, as Dana said, for contributing your voices. Each one of you is so necessary to the magic that we're creating here tonight. So thank you. So the ritual we're doing now is to allow us a little time to contemplate what we're letting go. I like to think of this letting go as we move, you know, we start another circle around the sun. As we enter 2024, and we imagine, like, you know, when they take those little boats of light, they put like a candle on like a paper boat and let it go down the river. We're considering what we're letting go, what we're letting go down the river of past, of time. And, you know, some of us may have lost people that we deeply loved and treasured. Some of us may have lost opportunities, marriages, partnerships, our faith in humanity. Some of us must have been having that challenge this year. And what if we imagine that candle we're setting off, that light we're setting off, is also a seed that we're planting into the earth that will grow new things, that will regenerate. One of the things that we really have our ancestors to be thankful for is that they feed us with their bodies. We will go into the soil in this ultimate act of generosity, give our life force back into the web of all life that we're drawing from even now. So I want to give us about 3 minutes to write what you're letting go of. And I'm going to put this in the chat. You can write it in the chat if you like, or you can write it in your journal. If you have friends with you, you can also just speak to your friends there. But it might be a nice time to just be in contemplation. So I put that in the chat. You're going to write about what you're letting go of. You could identify your choices in relation to this loss. So let's say you're letting go of a relationship, or let's say you're letting go of your mother. What were the choices that you made during that time? And then also, what has this loss permitted you to see that you couldn't see before? As we've been saying this entire evening, on the darkest night, we can see out into the furthest reaches of the universe. There are things that we can see now that we couldn't see if the dark had not come. So, yeah, I'm going to give us 3 minutes to write about this. And I would invite you in the chat to not hit send yet. If you're going to write it, I'll tell you when to hit send so that we all do it at once and it kind of comes all in the same moment of excitement. So go ahead and just write that. And like I said, 3 minutes for this. What you're letting go of from this year. So you have about 2 more minutes, and just reminding you about the prompts in the chat. So start to wrap up. So now, for 1 minute, I invite us to sit in the dark. So if you can turn off your lights, whatever is easy for you, if it's possible to do that. But we're going to sit in the dark now. And for 1 minute, we're going to just allow ourselves to contemplate what we're letting go of. And we don't need to figure anything out. We don't need to solve anything. We're just holding it for a moment before we plant it, before we return it to the earth. Hecate Caradwin, dark mother, take us in. Hecate Caradwin, let us be reborn. Hecate Caradwin, dark mother, take us in. Hecate Caradwin, let us be reborn. Awaken, arise, let the light shine. Call in your new forms. And now consider, what are you bringing in to the new year? What are we calling in for next year? So take a moment and you can send that in. So you can say what you're letting go of and you can say what you're calling in the chat. And I would love to go around the group while you're doing that and say what you're letting go of and what you're calling in for next year. And as you say what you're letting go of, I'm going to swish it off into the magic of the void and of the dark of the earth and help it find its way on black wing. And then as you say what you're calling in, I'll ring a bell to call it to us. So let's start with Melinda.
I am letting go of overworking, and more specifically the fear and the old trauma and roots of trauma that feed the overworking and the need to say yes to everything. And I am calling in that focus of the Queen of Swords to really just pour my focus and my energy into what resonates deeply in my heart and keeps it healthy physically and emotionally.
So you're letting go of the overwork?
Yes.
Okay. So overwork, hail and farewell. Queen of Swords, hail and welcome. Vanessa.
I just want to share how honored I feel to be here. That was really beautiful, just sitting in that darkness. I am ready to let go of comfort zone, fear, resistance, feelings of abandonment, feelings of lack of self-worth, not enoughness. And I invite in ownership of my power, change, and there's a word that has been coming through that I've heard several of you share here and there, and that's initiation, which really seems to be standing true for me right now. I really want to thank you, Amanda, just for the flow of this, of starting with what are we calling in, what's our offering, and going into what do we want to be now. And there's this energy of initiation that's coming through, and I'm so grateful for that. And of course, you have a book that is called Initiated, which is just so synchronized with all of this. So that's where I am right now. That's what I'm calling in.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. It's your wisdom and like powerful ritual skills and heart are always such a gift whenever I'm in your presence. So I'm so grateful to have you here. And I bid hail and farewell to fear of not being enough and to comfort zones, to being held back and to fear of loss. And I say welcome to initiation, owning your power, your voice, your vitality. Hail and welcome to the new magnificent being that you are. So Jonas and then Raïna.
I love what everybody is saying. I can identify with what everybody's letting go of. Um, I think most immediately for me, I recently wrote a book, my fourth book, and this one's called My Dear Far Nearness. And it's the story of God who is both near and far and everywhere and nowhere. And I think it's a really good book about the Christian Buddhist dialogue. And I've been holding back about marketing it. And I'm not sure why. Maybe that's some vestige of not feeling good enough, like others have mentioned. But so I want to go forward with that, with marketing, and get some more help to get this book out. I've always resisted this idea of branding. It seems so corporate. But I think the book deserves branding. I think it's good enough. I think it's unique enough. And so that's what I'm going to do. Thank you.
So we're bidding hail and farewell to not good enough and calling in visibility, calling in sharing your work with the world, calling in a big, beautiful audience for this book that you've just created.
Thank you.
And I just want to say to everyone too out in the audience as you're listening that as we're swishing and as we're calling in, this is going for all of you and everything that is in the chat. We are hailing farewell to all that you're letting go of, and we're calling it in with every ring of the bells. So let's go with Raïna and then Dennis.
Okay. I'm letting go of what did not belong to me in the first place. And I'm calling in tenderness, compassion, and the joy of being.
Hail and farewell, all that did not belong to you in the first place. May you go from love into love. Hail and welcome tenderness, compassion, and the joy of being. May you take root and be fruitful in Raïna's life. So Dennis and Jennifer.
I'm letting go of, at first I thought it was relationships with certain individuals. And I think that's true. And to maintain the memory of a friendship that doesn't exist anymore. But I think it's bigger than that. Excuse me. I think it's in relating to ideas that no longer work, feelings that are out of place, disproportionate, exaggerated. So it's about the nature of how I relate to people, to things, to ideas. And what I'm calling in is risking a bit more in 2024, risking in my writing, risking in my painting, trying some new things, and being perfectly comfortable with falling short. Yeah.
Yeah. So we are bidding hail and farewell to all ideas that no longer work, no longer serve, and feelings that are exaggerated and out of proportion. We are letting them move back into the night and into the dark. And we are calling in risk in all creative endeavors and being comfortable with whatever comes. Letting it show up and letting it belong now in 2024. Hail, 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 and welcome.
Thank you.
So Jennifer and then Dana, and then I'll close us out. I'll close our circle and we can stay, and I'll pass the mic back to you, Dana.
So mine's pretty simple. I'm just letting go of frustration and aggravation and bringing in a whole bunch more joy.
Yes, letting go. Hail and farewell, frustration, aggravation. May your passage be swift and easy into the night. And we're welcoming in a lot more joy for Jennifer and all of us. May that joy take root and blossom throughout the world in the name of love. Hail and welcome. Dana.
You know, it's hard coming up with these lists because, you have to go into the heart and figure out, what things are near and dear to us. And I've held on to these things, but I want to let go of my rigidity. I want to let go of my need for excess, my being right, my excessive self-reference and self-deprecation, two sides of the same coin, my fear of being judged, and I also want to get rid of more of my stuff.
Okay.
And then I want to call in trust, patience, listening, and love.
Okay. Let's call it in.
That's a pretty heavy list.
So we bid hail, hail, and farewell to rigidity, to the need for excess. We bid hail and farewell to the need to be right, towards being overly self-deprecating. We bid hail and farewell to the fear of judgment. We bid hail and farewell to all the excess stuff that we don't need. Let it go off into the night, down the river, back to the earth where it belongs. Let it be regenerated, restored, renewed, transformed, recycled, and sent back to its rightful place. And we call in trust, patience, listening, and love. Hail and welcome trust, patience, listening, and love. May you take root and blossom, and may your love feed the earth in the name of love. Hail and welcome. And I call in for myself, I let go of avoidance. Avoidance, may you circle down the river of life and find your way into the earth, to be absorbed into the ground, to feed and nourish the plants. Avoidance, I allow you to go. And I call in confidence and concentration in taking my work seriously,
and commitment to creativity in all of its forms, commitment to sharing my voice with the world. In the name of love, I call in my voice, my true voice. Hail, 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 and welcome. Great ones, guardians, angels, guides, ancestors, beings who serve in perfect love and perfect trust, all those who we called to gather here with us tonight, thank you for your presence and your blessings here today. Thank you for we can already feel them working. May all of our work today be for the greatest good of all concerned and for the greatest good of all beings throughout the universe. May this wisdom continue to grow in us. May you show up in our dreams. May we take this wisdom out into the world and create a more just and loving and beautiful world and stay connected to one another and to all of our kin and all of our kin on the side of spirit and all of our animal kin and plant kin and the elemental kins, the water, the air, the earth, the fire. Let us all stay in a web of life together. Great ones, thank you for your presence and your blessings. Our work here is done. Hail and farewell. Our circle is open yet unbroken. May the peace of the goddess be ever in our hearts. Merry meet and merry part and merry meet again. Merry Solstice, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today.
What I'd like to do is, with all of the content in the sounds, is do one more ringing of the singing bowl that sends us into silence. Well, Amanda, I think this was wonderful. I think it was one of the most substantive, without a definite content-driven type thing. We're going to talk about this. And I think from what I could tell in the chat, the thing that I see in the chat that is going to be really rich is taking that and converting that into the content of what you read, when you're watching this video, because I really think they're jewels. This was a gem. And so, and Jennifer, I love seeing you again. It's just been too long. And Raïna, Melinda, Dennis, Vanessa, Jonas, what a wonderful, wonderful evening. So I'm just going to go. Wonderful having you all here. Go into the darkness with love. Have a great new year. Happy holidays. And off we go.
Thank you, everyone. What a wonderful evening. Beautiful.
Thank you.
All right.